This is Heart Rhythm TV. I'm Deepthy Varghese. Today I have two very special guests that I'd like to welcome. Rachel Schreier, incoming chair of Allied Health Professional Council, and Julie Thomas, the incoming co-chair. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Both bring a wealth of experience and passion for advancing allied health professionals in the field of electrophysiology. Let's dive in. Rachel and Julie, the Allied Health Professional Council has come a long way since it began. Can you walk us through a brief history of the AP Council?
Yeah, happy to do that. And so just to preface this, really the whole intention of us meeting with you today is to raise awareness about some important work that we've been doing on the AP Council. We have been working on a leadership pathway, and we're going to dive into that a little bit more. We are filming this from HRX, which is our innovation meeting in the fall, but by the time you see this, it will be October, November, at which point Julie and I will have assumed our positions as AP Council Chair and Co-Chair, and this document will be available to everyone. There is another HRS TV segment, I believe, that goes a little more into detail about the history of APs in Heart Rhythm Society and the AP Council. But we just wanted to provide a little background about why we embarked on this leadership pathway and why this is so important. For those of you who have been around a while, you may recall that there was a period of time during which there was no separate AP Council. There was about a 15-year gap between the transition from the old NASP, which later became Heart Rhythm Society, where it was felt that we're all kind of one big group. And just didn't really account for the fact that, as APs, we represent really a diverse and homogenous group of professions. And some of the needs that we have are different than the needs of some of our physician partners. And additionally, we're 25 to 30% of the membership consistently, and yet we represent many different professions. And so there was a real need or push for us to have some formal forum to represent ourselves, to talk about our needs. And so the AP Council was reformed, I believe, in 2019. Julie Shea was the first chair of the AP Council after it reformed and relaunched. And so that's kind of the background of this. The AP Council is comprised of a number of different people, and it's just like contact your councilman. If you have questions or concerns, we are sort of the home or represent, like 2,000 members. And so we are composed of a number of different people, including AP members who sit on the various committees that Heart Rhythm Society has. There are some at-large members who are otherwise not on committees. We have representation from the Board of Trustees and then other councils. And more recently now we have HRA, or Heart Rhythm Advocates, so that will get incorporated as well. And additionally, now there is a whole other group of folks through Pat Blake's leadership, and then also Martha Ferreira, who is our outgoing AP Council Chair, and Ashley Martinez, who is our liaison. We've really been sort of advancing allies and becoming more visible and more active. And so that was kind of the background of what pushed us to want to take a step back and take a look and see, what else could we do to bring some clarity around leadership and for those who might be interested, particularly with the advent of the LEAP program. Now there's a formal leadership program. And so now that we are training, leaders and getting people engaged and excited, wanted to take a step back and figure out, well, how can we best support that and best understand that? And so that was really the background of what led to the work that we're going to talk about today.
Wow, it's really inspiring to see how much the AP Council has grown and adapted over the years. One of the initiatives of the AP Leadership, AP Council is the AP Leadership Framework. Julie, could you talk a little bit about this leadership framework?
Sure. So it was, as Rachel just explained, there wasn't any set guidelines or pathway of how we can advance ourselves as APs within HRS. And so, it was a collaborative effort amongst many APs from all various levels, from early careers to mid-careers to those who are well experienced. And so collectively, the group had come up with this leadership framework. And like I said, it's a non-linear pathway. And you'll see on the track that there are, several branches going up from how I can start off my career here as an AP in HRS, and how do I further advance my career, even to the point where, we haven't had any APs yet go to the presidential track, but how do we as APs, if there is a appropriate candidate or there's a candidate who wants to go to the presidential track, how do we get to that point? And we thought this was a great way to make it very clear to APs. And I think one of the biggest selling point is, transparency. A lot of APs, I think in previous years in the past, were put into various roles, and people would always say, how did that person get into that role? And now we've made it sort of clear of how people can actually fairly and transparently get into certain roles.
Yeah, and we embarked on this in December of 2023. We formed a working group that was comprised of members of the AP Council, and as Julie mentioned, really encompassed people from a variety of backgrounds and stages in their career. Julie and Aileen Varick, Erica Zotto, and some of those, more senior folks who had board or trustee appointments, mid-career folks like myself, and then some of our newer members. It was probably about a dozen or so of us, or maybe a dozen and a half. I was the chair of that working group, which is, part of what led to me being with you today. And we actually did this sort of in two phases. Kind of phase number one was an environmental survey where we kind of looked at the background of leadership and what was known and not known. And one thing that really surprised us is, even though many of us were already sitting in leadership positions, it was confusing or unclear how people got into those positions. And so I think a lot of people may not be aware that really outside of participating in sort of like early level leadership opportunities, that those higher level, chair positions, that kind of work, that's all selected by the executive committee. And so it's not voted on, it's based on your experience. And so that's part of what pushed us to develop this document. And then the second phase of that was to actually put the document together. And so it's in sections that we can talk about a little bit more. It includes some of the background. HRS has some background that doesn't just apply to AP leaders, but sort of leadership tracks that they recognize. So we go into that a little bit more. So this is intended to be a resource and kind of almost a guidebook. If you're like, boy, I've been attending, scientific sessions. Maybe I've spoken at or moderated a session. Maybe I've done a journal club session, but now I really want to dig into leadership. It's like, what does that look like? And so there are three different tracks. There's a contributor track, a more formal leadership track, and a presidential track. As Julie pointed out, that we have not yet had anybody ascend all the way through that track, but is not closed to us. So just trying to make that more clear, and also to know that there is a volunteer competency framework that HRS recognizes. So we included that as well. And then tried to tease out, well, if I'm thinking about contributor track, which is kind of like the beginning step where you're presenting at meetings, or you're reviewing abstracts, or you're doing other things, or you're doing work at your local level, you're participating in committees locally in your home institution. How does that feed into some of these higher level activities, and then how does that get us, to some of those more advanced positions? Board of Trustees is something that we historically have had people on. By the time this is out and available for review, the call for volunteers will have already been out for that this year. But just so people can understand what those levels look like and put it in a graphic representation, along with a compendium of what the different committees are, the different other groups that you may volunteer in, just so it's a little more concise. So this will all be available on the AP resources page, probably sometime in October or November. It was presented to the Board of Trustees yesterday evening at the beginning of this conference, just to kind of let them know, but it's already been approved.
I love that there is a clear path for professional growth within the allied professional community in HRS. Talk to me a little bit about the consultative role that you have as leaders in appointing leadership within HRS.
Julie, do you want to take that one?
So I think, we do have a responsibility as, I think, working in the AP Council, using this framework to ensure that we have the right candidates in the right roles. We want to make sure that, the candidates have been engaged, have been involved to basically, we're not necessarily choosing them because the ultimate decision is usually up to the president, but sort of giving our strong recommendations on the appropriate candidates for the appropriate committee chairs. And I think that's, very important. And I think it's sort of, like I said, sort of our responsibility and using this as a good guideline and framework to make those selections.
Yeah, and we don't directly choose people for the role, but as Julie mentioned a minute ago, we provide consultation. And so you will see that part of how we do that when you get an opportunity to look at the actual framework is by looking at, how people are participating and engaging in leadership. You will see that this is not a linear structure. It's not a linear ladder where you do one thing that leads to the next. There's the opportunity to go back and forth, and so there's some double arrows on that. Our intention is that it will be an iterative process, and we'll need continuous review of this moving forward. So, for instance, since we developed the initial ladder, which was initially proposed by Julie Shea some years ago, now Heart Rhythm Advocates has become part of our landscape. And so we'll have to figure out how to incorporate that in folks that participate in those committees into the leadership succession planning or the leadership pathway. But as we have completed the work and we're getting ready to publish this first document that sort of summarizes, how one develops leadership opportunities within Heart Rhythm Society. We're now kind of into the next phase of what this project will be. So the working group for this leadership plan sort of completed. A lot of the people still sit on AP Council. We have started an additional engagement working group that is chaired by Amy Kleinhans. And then there are some subgroups that will help us sort of actualize how do we use this document and how do we put it into action. So there are three groups. There's a virtual engagement group. So for instance, the Journal Club exists under that. There's a mentoring group. We're going to relaunch the mentoring platform as part of that. And then there's an annual meeting group that helps complement the work that Julie and her team, as Julie's the offgoing chair of the program committee for APs, helps complement, particularly in the AP Lounge and how we represent there. So kind of the next wave of this is using this document to create additional opportunities for some micro-volunteering to continue to foster transparency and fairness and have an organized role in helping people move through. And then, the LEAP program obviously is wonderful and is generating some high-level leaders. but there are many, many people. The classes are small. It's only like 20 people a year. So how do we lead up or manage up to help identify other people that may be outside of the LEAP environment to really help them develop their leadership skills within our Rhythm Society as well?
Well, thank you both for sharing your insights and vision. It's clear that the AP Council is in great hands. I'm excited for this working document and to see what else you both come up with in the near future. This is Heart Rhythm TV. Stay tuned for more content.